Welcome back to the Kovacs Report for another honest comic book review. I'm going to take a look at Scott Snyder and Jock's You Won't Feel a Thing out from DSTLRY. Now, this is one of their prestige formats, oversized books. It's double the length of a normal comic book. And it was a very, very interesting pickup because I love Jock. I also love some of the variant covers here. They've got some great artists on the variant covers. Jay Lee especially, who's one of my favourites of all time, which was another reason why I picked this book up. Not just because it's got serial killers and Jock. But anyway, let's get into the book. So it's a really interesting murder mystery, basically. It's about a serial killer. But it's also there's two horrors here. It's not just the murder itself. It's also about the main character, the main protagonist, John. Now, he's an old detective now, and he's retired, and he's in, for want of a better word, an old retirement home, right? You know, one of those old communities that they send you to when you're getting on in the years. But unfortunately, he has a brain tumor, which is causing this dementia, which is getting worse. So his nurse, and he's very close to this nurse, this friend, has these cards, and each one represents a door. So a doorway to, for example, the kitchen, a doorway to work, a doorway to wherever, to trigger memories, try and keep his memories sharp. And he's sharp anyway. You know, he does as much as he can to keep himself sharp. So it's not just a battle of a serial killer who done it. It's also sort of battle of against aging and losing your memory, those fears as well. So that really underlines this whole murder mystery. And I think it's very cleverly done. So Jock's art is amazing throughout this, and the story is told through flashbacks and present time. You know, so we learn about John when he was a teenager, a typical teenager, his first love called Flower, who he's madly in love with. He's terrified that she's going to find someone else when she goes off to college in a week. You know, he's chatting to his best friend Buzz on the phone, who comes into play later. So, you know, before he left the town himself and became a detective in Washington and the FBI and all those things. So it really does build a picture of where he came from and who he is very early on. So through one of these doors, he tells a story of the first time him and Flower, his partner, had sex, made love, whatever you want to call it. And that's a pleasant memory. But these doors, again, they play this major part of the story here. You as you sort of go through the book, you know, it's like each time she asks him what's behind the door and he has a story, I feel like he's just telling a story so that she doesn't really know how messed up he is in the head, because throughout the book it's implied, and he says it quite rightly, that he just sees what happened, which we'll get to later on. So, you know, he's haunted by these memories, and all doors lead to this terrible, terrible, terrible thing that happened. Again, which is quite dark, and I really, really like it. So anyway, he's in this retirement home, and there are three sections to this place. So there's green, yellow, and blue. So the green one, you can come and go as you like. The blue one, you get signed out by your helper, your aide, your nurse. And the blue one, you're there for good. You can't leave. You can't go out. You know, you're in trouble there mentally as well. You're probably like, dementia is so bad, you might hurt yourself. And he's got this fear of being put into the blue section of the retirement home, which is quite important, because doesn't just play on the fears of murder and here and serial killers. It plays on the fears of, like I said earlier, of getting old. I mean, it's quite frightening. So he has another scan. They find out this tumor is getting bigger. Then he meets his friend Buzz, who's also the chief of police of his hometown, where this retirement home is. And he asks him to take a look at cases from time to time, try and keep him sharp. And he notices at this time he's given him a case that it's actually already been solved. And Buzz was just checking that he's still sharp and he still remembers things, you know. So you could tell there's love between these two men. You could tell that they grew up together and that they're great, great, great friends. Okay, there's more flashbacks, and here's a very important one. So back when he was a teenager and Flower was going to go away for college, I think a couple of days before, he decides that he's going to buy an engagement ring, propose to her. So he turns up to the house, and no one answers the door, and then it stops, and you know what's coming, right? You know where we're going with this. And then we jump back to him passing out. So it's showing that he's starting to fight this illness, and he's not in good shape. But anyway, he signs out and he goes to see his son, and we find out that their relationship is very strained as well. He was obsessed with his career, you know, as a detective, and he was an absent father. And his son Declan really resents him for it. And he also brings up the Chatterman, which is the serial killer of this book. you know. So he collects teeth, like I said, with the wire frame so that they chatter when he approaches, you know, because it became an obsession. If this was the case he could never solve, this overtook his life at the expense of maybe family and the relationships that he could have had. And his son just hasn't forgiven him. He has another episode, and then we get this reveal. We get this reveal that the reason why Flower wasn't answering the door was because she was absolutely brutally murdered. And I mean brutally murdered. She was beaten with 25 bone breaks, stabbed 72 times, hacked to the bone in 10 places with a hatchet, and the police call it EO, an extreme overkill. Also, one of her teeth was missing, which is the memento this serial killer chooses to take from each of his victims. So it was absolutely brutal, probably shaped him to become a detective. So it's quite graphic. It's really, like I say, it's really well done. The colouring in this book is really interesting as well. Anyway, he does a little class with the kids who's for his aid, and it's her son, and she's brought him in as a guest to talk about being a detective. And sure enough, they bring up serial killers and they ask him questions. You know, did you catch this killer? Yes, I did. Did you do this? Did you do that? And they bring up the chatter man. He deals with it very, very well because this is a trigger for him. But we find out that he actually did meet him briefly once. He was a few foot away, and we get our first real glimpse of what he looks like. Looks quite gruesome, really quite gruesome. And he goes home, and it's nothing else he can think about. It's on his mind. Anyway, the next morning he wakes up and they find out that the head nurse or the director, I forget who the title of the home, has been brutally murdered in exactly the same MO as the chatter killer. So tooth missing, stabbed, beaten, chopped up. So he phones up Buzz and says, listen, you know it's him. It's not me being, you know, suffering from dementia. You know it's him. It has to be him. And more importantly, it means that Flower's death wasn't just random. It means that someone from our town must have been the killer. It couldn't have been just someone perchance passing through the town and picked that door and killed that, you know, his girlfriend. And that's where it ends. And he decides, right, I'm going to solve this case. It's brilliant. It's really gripping. It's kind of a slow burn. You get moments of gruesomeness, dark moments. You really, really start feeling for this guy really early on. So again, it's a traditional serial killer story, but it's got a few twists, which I really, really like. There's that amazing Jay Lee cover that I just like, look at it. It looks so cool. Do I love it? Yes, I do. Am I going to read it? Yes, I am. I'm really impressed with this book. DSTLRY do pump out some real interesting books lately, and I do like the prestige format. Not everyone does, but this for me is a definite recommend. I've got to see where this is going. So I think it's gonna verge away from that traditional cop catching the serial killer, the case he could never solve. So again, those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. I thoroughly recommend you pick up this book. Let me know what you think, and we will catch you in the next one.